Okay.
And we're live.
All right. Well, hi everybody. If anybody's out there, I'm Tom Rosenberg, artistic director of the Fishoff competition and cellist and chamber music performer and coach. And I'm just here. I guess what I will do until I get a message, if there is a message, is uh, I guess I should just talk a little bit about the Fishoff competition. Uh, The Fishoff competition is in South Bend, Indiana. It's currently at the University of Notre Dame. And it's been going on for quite a while, and I've been involved in it for quite a long time. This is my 40th year as the artistic director. And I'm not all that old, but somehow it's my 40th year. The way it all started was that I was in a string quartet called the Chester Quartet, and we were the fellowship quartet at the Eastman School of Music with the Cleveland Quartet. We were actually the first group in their program that finished the whole program. There was one group ahead of us, but we were the early pioneers, the first recipients of that benefit, and it was an incredible experience to work with all of them. It was and then we got a job right out of school. There was a residency at Indiana University in South Bend, not the Bloomington branch. But that school, although it's fairly small, has always had a string quartet in residence. So we got out there, and the very first phone call I ever received, once I had a phone, was from Joe Fishoff. So, oh, hey, and there's a question. Okay, so I'm going to stop talking about the Fishoff. The truth is, I play a very, very beautiful Storioni cello from 1794. I'm very, very fortunate to have it. I believe there's only 6 Storioni cellos. This is not it. I'm in my basement studio where I teach, and sometimes it's kind of cluttered and it can get banged around. So this is a very, very good and very nice modern Chinese cello that costs hardly anything, and things can. It works extremely well for teaching. Sometimes I'll bring my my Storioni down here for lessons. But, for instance, not very long ago, one of my students dropped a metal music stand on top of this cello and put a little crack in the top. So that's one reason I don't teach in my basement very much with my Storioni. But it's really, really, really nice, and I'm very, very lucky to have it. But this is not it. It is beautiful, though. Look at that. Pretty nice cello. And it works great for most teaching, and it's as good as any cello my students have. So if I can't make it sound good, they're not going to make theirs sound good. And then there's another question here. What artists have been most influential to me in my life so far? And in what ways have they affected your approach to music? Wow. Okay. That's a great question. Probably the most influential. And I'm not trying to butter anybody up, but it's probably Paul Katz and the Cleveland String Quartet. I grew up in Buffalo, New York. Buffalo has a very, very long history of great chamber music, and there's something there called the Slee Beethoven cycle. And whoever Mr. Slee or Mr. and Mrs. Slee were, they set up an endowment to have this Beethoven cycle of string quartets performed every year in Buffalo, every single year. And when I was growing up, it was the Budapest quartet. And the endowment says the greatest quartets of the day should be playing this. So I grew up around that. When I was really, really young, My parents would take me to these concerts. They were in a tiny concert hall called Baird Hall. We sat on the stage. I would sit practically right next to Misha Schneider. Then when they retired, they brought in the Cleveland Quartet. So while I was in high school, the Cleveland Quartet was there, and they were tremendously exciting and charismatic quartet. My senior year in high school, I started studying cello with Paul Katz. Then I went to Oberlin, but I always wanted to be in a quartet, and I was in a quartet in high school in my senior year, back when hardly anybody played quartets in high school. In fact, two of us were high school students, and the other two were students who studied with the Cleveland Quartet at the university. And then I always just wanted chamber music in my life. I went to Charlie Castleman's quartet program. Charlie and Heidi Castleman were very influential on me as well, and helped form the quartet, which eventually became this quartet, the Chester String Quartet. We then wanted to study with the Cleveland Quartet at Eastman. They were at the Eastman School of Music, and there was a competition to win that fellowship, and we won that. And they were incredibly supportive and wonderful. So in a lot of ways, it's them. Other string quartets too. The Guarneri Quartet, the Tokyo Quartet, they were highly influential. Who else was really, really influential? Eugene Laner, who's passed away. But Eugene Laner was very influential. We would, every time we were in Boston, our quartet would go and play for him. So I think in a lot of ways, it's the members of the Cleveland Quartet that are maybe the most influential. They always talked about when you perform, you're giving to the audience. It's always about giving to the audience. It's about spontaneity. Nothing should ever feel like it's overly, so predictable and rehearsed. And have always tried to think about that. That even if it is rehearsed, that it seems like it's the first time for the audience. So I hope that's somewhat helpful in answering that question. Next question, what are a few core principles you encourage your students to focus on in the practice room? Use your time wisely, be efficient, don't be sloppy in the practice room, be disciplined. When you're practicing, it's valuable time. Some people have very little time to practice, and some people have many, many hours to practice. In some ways, those who have less time need to learn even more how to be efficient with their practicing. If they are a college student, let's say at Carleton College, and they're not a music major, and they have a lot of work outside of music to do, I will encourage them to practice, even if it's just 10 or 15 minutes a day. Do some scales, do 10 minutes on the most difficult passage, careful work. Don't start at the beginning of the piece, go right for the jugular, go for the place you need to go. Be patient, work on it methodically and slowly, and get your ears and hands involved in learning it, not so much your eyes. I think that's a big mistake. Cello people can look, and it's really your ears and your hands that are playing the cello, your arms and hands and ears. So that's the primary core principle, I would say. And to always enjoy your practice time. Use it as a sort of time for yourself. Not a time to be pressured, but a time to help you almost like therapy, I guess. Hi. Can you suggest exercises to practice with string quartet? Yeah. Tuning, articulation, intonation, rhythm. Okay, thank you. I could talk about 4.5 years about this. I'm actually, I lost that question, but, oh, there, I see how to get it. Okay, boy, there's a lot to questions. One of my favorite, depends on the level of students we're talking about here, but a great way to teach a group to play in tune. Because, quartet intonation is vertical intonation. It's not horizontal. So sometimes you have to play low thirds and high sevenths or low sevenths. And if you go around and take a key, let's say C major, and you make sure, first of all, that everyone is really in tune with each other. All the G strings are the same. The C strings are the same. And you have each member of the group play a note of the triad. So let's say you have the cello playing the C, open C, viola, open G, and then you split between the two violins an E and either C or G. Let's say the second violin might play C and the first violin play E, and you play a scale together. You move your bows together and you go up the scale, and you get everyone having a chance to be playing the root, the third, the fifth. Sometimes you can do that by adding the seventh. And you'll see in particular that when you have the third of a chord, you have to usually temper it down or tune it lower. Like for instance, I don't know if you guys can see this, but yeah, you can. Okay, I'm making a C, an E that fits, but that's going to be low to my A. So if I make my E fit my A, it's going to sound sharp to the G. So you have to learn how to adjust your fingers based on the chord that is being played. It isn't just like, you match your open strings necessarily. So because if you did that, a C major chord will sound out of tune in quartet. The E will be a little bit sharp, for instance. And there are tricks you can do with tuning. If you know you're in a key, sometimes the cello can tune, or the cello and viola can tune their open strings a little tiny bit high at the bottom, and the E can be pushed down a little bit. But that's one really, really good way of practicing for intonation. In terms of just general tuning, it's really, really helpful to tune individually. Don't have everybody else playing while somebody's tuning. And listen to each other, because the more you listen to the way each other tune, the more you will learn how to play in tune together. In terms of articulation, there's a lot of ways you can practice that, but a lot of it is observing each other and imitating the bow strokes. I talk often, especially to younger groups, but there was an invention that Thomas Jefferson made, which so he could make copies of letters. He could make and he would dip both pens in, and one thing he would write with, and the other one would exactly replicate over on another page. And I often will sort of try to get people to be like Thomas Jefferson's copier. If I move my arm this way, somebody else is moving their arm this way, so that you get exact bow speed matching. You all have to observe, and are you using the same part of the bow? And if not, is there a good reason, like maybe a C string versus an E string? Things like that. Rhythm, pulse, metronome, and a good loud one. Or you can put it through a speaker. I have a speaker over here. You can broadcast a metronome through a speaker so that everyone can still play loud. Like let's say you're doing a Bartok quartet or something, and you really want to be clean, you can do that. So that's a quick answer to a lifelong answer. Let me go to the next question. What position, regarding the position of the cello, do you prefer in a string quartet, and why? Inside or outside? I like the cello on the inside, generally speaking. A lot of it has to do with intonation. If the cello is on the outside, the people who are behind it are hearing the bass in general come from a different direction than the people who are level with it. So if you're sending the bass out into the quartet from behind, I think it establishes the root of the intonation a little bit better. I also, in terms of projection, I like being able to be facing the audience and communicate. It's easier for me to communicate with the audience, I feel like, when I'm facing somewhat forward. And I feel like being the cellist, it's the center of the, excuse me to everybody else, but I feel like the cello is the center of the group. Not necessarily, well, everybody's equal, but you're in a position where you're in very close contact to all players. You're just straight across to the first violin, so that communication's really easy. And you have your peripheral vision with both of the inner voices on either side of you. So I prefer that. I know it's a very personal thing, and many great quartets have done it both ways. How do I recommend loosening tension in the right hand? Wow. Okay. Well, that's kind of sounds easy. Don't squeeze with your thumb. But I will get more specific. In the right hand, first of all, if it depends, I mean, this is such a pedagogical question, but if you can see where my thumb is, it's not up above the stick. If you put your cello, if you have the big joint of your bow, of your thumb, up above the stick, you're going to end up squeezing to hold the bow. But if it's down below, the bow is actually sitting on my thumb. Like, I can push quite hard down on my thumb. So if I keep it bent in this position, generally, and put it where it belongs here, not in the Valley of Doom over in here, but here. And then my fingers go on top, and just like almost everything, you know, all you have to do is hold the bow this way and you'll feel that there isn't any tension in your hand. The bow is just, you know, you could close your eyes and someone could walk past you and take the bow right out of your hand and you wouldn't be squeezing. And at the same time, the bow isn't going to go falling down. It's very much like, I don't know if I have that nearby. Yeah, I do. This is one of my little tricks. Here's a water bottle. Okay, it's very old. I don't even want to tell you how old it is. It's probably 10 or 15 years old. So I have, like, do not drink and it's closed. But if you just hold this water bottle, you just take it out. If you go to pour from it into a cup, you're going to probably do that. And the water, the weight of the water will tip the bottle. And your hand will do this, which is collé, right? You would very rarely take this bottle and squeeze it so hard that it makes that sound. And at the same time, you would never do anything weird like that. You would let the weight of the water do that. And I'm always interested, like when I fly, or when I used to fly, I don't know if I'll ever fly again, but you watch a flight attendant. They come up to people and they go, "What do you want?" You know, and you go, "Pepsi," and they're talking to you and they throw the peanuts at you, and as they're talking to you, they're turning your head to someone else and talking, and they're pouring the Coke with the most perfect bow arm you've ever seen. Just absolute perfect bow arm. And at the same, then if you handed them a cello bow, they'd probably go like, you know, some horrible messed up bow grip like you see in the movies all the time. But so if you think that your weight is on top of the bow with your hand, and the cello is going to be holding up, let me do this, sorry. The cello is going to be holding up the bow. And then you can take your fingers, and it's like if someone puts a drop of crazy glue and you're stuck on there. You can jiggle your hand back and forth, and your fingers are relaxed. Right? And then if you just roll that over and put your thumb in there, C for cello. See that? C for cello. And just allow physics, like, come down onto the cello, your fingers are going to be relaxed. If you squeeze with your thumb, they won't be. And here's the other, really the problem. I was back at this. This is a really important question, so that's why I'm spending so much time on it. But here, someone can just take the bow out. But as soon as you go and start going parallel to the floor, this muscle right here and your thumb are going to have to get tense, or else the bow's just going to fall. So the problem is going from here where you're relaxed. If you feel that muscle, it's all squishy, very squishy muscle, and my thumb muscle is squishy. As soon as I go into this position, this muscle is going to have to get tighter. And the trick is, once you get to here, to relax those and let the weight go through the front of your first finger a little bit more, and then this muscle again will be squishy, and then your hand will be relaxed. And it's very, very much like sitting in a chair. If I can sit, I can stand up and sit down on this chair, and you may think I'm sitting on it, but I'm actually not. You could put a piece of paper under me, and now all my legs and my torso are really tight. And then I sit in the chair. I trust the chair to hold me up. And it's the same in the bow. Here, you're relaxed. Here, you can't be because you'll drop the bow. Then you get the cello to hold the bow up, and your fingers can then become supple and soft again. And you like pull and push the bow. Anyway, that was a very long answer, but it was a kind of really important question about cello and any bow hold. Okay, Wendy Pang, any advice to improve right and left hand coordination, especially in fast passages? Oh, wow, in the Moses variations. Well, in anything, okay? I'm just going to talk about anything. If you probably know this trick, but if you practice in what are called rhythms, the trick is to get your brain and to decide how to use your hands, right? And with your ears. And if you relate it to sports, for instance, let's say it's a baseball game and someone hits the ball into left field and the left fielder goes flying towards the left field wall, and in one motion scoops up the ball, spins his body or her body, but they spin their body, they throw the ball, it lands 1 foot to the right of second base into the glove of the second baseman, and they tag out the guy trying to get a double. When you think about the number of complex muscles and calculations that the brain did to create that, it's kind of like something that at least I cannot comprehend. Maybe you can. Anyway, the brain, though, needs to learn how to do these things, these very complex motions. And if you just think, okay, walking. At this point, I'm guessing that you can walk, and you don't even think about it. But it took your brain a long time to teach you how to walk. When you first started, you fell down all the time. People were holding your hands, and you were a little baby, and you're learning how to walk. And then eventually you can walk on your own, but you toddle around. And it takes 3 or 4 years, maybe 4 years, 5 years before somebody has a normal gait, an adult gait. So it's no surprise that these things take a long time for us to learn. But practice very slowly at first. There's 2 things involved. Your ear has to know which notes it wants to hear. And then you need to practice in rhythm. So let's just say, I don't know, I'll take the Lalo concerto, the thing, that passage. And if you put on a metronome, I'm going to put it on. I hope you can hear this. Let's go slow. Like, two, three, 1, 2, 3. So each little 16th note is getting 4 beats. Each group is getting 4 beats. 1, 2, 3, ba-da, 4, ba-da, 1, 2, 3, ba-da, 4, da-da, 1, 2, 3. And then you do the second note. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, A. Then you do the third note. 3, 4, 2, 3. Then the fourth note. Etc. And you go through whatever the passage is. C major scale would be 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and then 1, 3, 4, and you do that. I picked really simple examples there, and I'm doing it very, very, very slowly. But slow practice is how your brain learns more quickly. And if you cover all of the rhythms possible, like in a fast passage like that, it's like, I hate to say it, but the curve goes like this. We've seen that curve in the news. But you start, and you may start very slowly, but once your fingers and ears know where to play and can do all the various rhythmic combinations, it's going to go, you're going to start speeding that metronome up really easily. At first, it's hard and you go slow, but once you get it, you'll go and you'll click right on up, and then you're going to hit a plateau, and you kind of have to go through the same thing again. But eventually, your brain will learn how to do that quickly. And the truth is, in my opinion, my experience, people who try to learn it fast, learn it sloppy, their ears and hands don't really get it, and they never really learn it. So the slow practice is fast practice. You've probably heard that many times, but it's true. It works. Start slow, be methodical, teach yourself all the rhythms in a complex pattern. Get your ear to know where every note is, and then slowly speed it up. Okay, so I hope that's somewhat helpful. Okay, David Brandenburg has a question. Do you have an exercise to improve the strength and dexterity of your pinky? Not really, and I have an interesting pinky. I have a broken pinky. I was an athlete as well as a cellist. As a matter of fact, not too many people know this, but I ended up my first year of college. I wasn't sure I wanted to be a cellist, and I had an athletic scholarship. I was a gymnast. I was a pretty good gymnast. I'd kill myself now if I did that, but I also played a lot of sports in high school, and this finger got broken, and the trainer just taped it together to my other finger for like a month, and now it's permanently bent and weak, and it affects me sometimes. But you know, I don't really, that's a good question, and I don't sort of have my own set exercise, but anything that where you're going, that kind of thing, is going to help. That's that where you're working that. But another part of that, in my opinion, is hand position. And this is, not everybody believes in this, but I certainly do, and that if your hand is curved this way and coming straight at the cello, first of all, you're more likely to squeeze with the thumb because your arm isn't really the one holding the string down. So if I turn myself this way, you can see it's physics. What angle is that? That's a 90-degree angle. And when you do that, the strength of your fingers is less important for a lot of reasons. But if you just feel like you're going down to the ground and you hold and you're going to be in this position, first of all, it makes your fourth finger turn in. That is already, and then if you just hold the cello this way and try to move your fourth finger, you can feel how constricted it is. If you rotate your arm back, and again, it looks really high from one angle, but it's not really. If you just rotate your arm back at 90 degrees, you'll see that the pinky immediately goes that way, and you have a bigger interval in your hand. And at the same time, assuming your left leg is holding the cello, see, I can push against the cello because my left leg is in the way. When I'm playing with my left arm, rather than pushing down and trying to hold the string down, I feel like it's the power of my arm that's mostly holding the string down. I'm not squeezing with my thumb up. In fact, my thumb is unnecessary. There's my thumb, right? And just like I was talking about in the bow, where you keep your thumb curved, if you keep your thumb curved, see, for cello, and let it ride up and down the neck. On this cello, I even teach with a piece of tape. You hear that? I don't know if you can hear that, but I have that there. It's painter's tape. It doesn't hurt the varnish at all. It has such a very light amount of adhesive, but it has texture. And if I use it mostly for vibrato, but I don't know if you guys can hear this, but I'm going to put it near the mic. And then if I turn and don't use the tape, you can't hear my thumb. So that is a guide. If you can't hear your thumb moving when you're vibrating, for instance, that means you're squeezing really hard with your thumb. Your thumb should be free to move, or totally relaxed. A lot of people will have their thumb bent this way and squeezing, and their fingers will go in, and that's just a big problem. That slows everything down. So in terms of the fourth finger, it's much weaker this way than it is this way. I can pull my cello pretty hard with just my fourth finger, and I'm not squeezing at all with it. It's just, so I don't know if that helps. And then you can practice trills and think about lifting it rather than pressing it down, because that's what's going to slow you down. Okay, there's a lot more questions, so I'm going to just keep on going here. I hope that was helpful. Yoshi, hello from Japan. Hi. Do you have any advice on how to practice in order to improve the agility of the left thumb? Yeah. Again, I'm going to try to answer fairly quickly, and this is my own ideas. I don't know if anybody else in the world even thinks of them, but the thumb, excuse me, when you put it up there, first of all, this is pretty standard, but the D string will probably meet right where your thumb meets, and then you want the A string to be hitting not here at the wrinkle, but I hope you can see this, but above, somewhere in there's a very hard bone, right? But the other thing, and I'll see if I can turn this way. Okay, if your thumb, you can do that, and if you just take your thumb and move it up and down the cello, you can feel there's a lot of friction there. And that's from your skin and everything. If you turn your hand towards you, you're going to end up partially on your thumbnail, especially on the D string. Well, only on the D string. But then it slides really, really easy. It slides really easily that way. And on top of that, again, we're talking physics, but you want your weight, or I do at least, want my weight coming down at 90 degrees. I have to turn, but here's approximately 90 degrees. I want my arm coming down into the cello this way and not this way. Not over here, not down here, but into the cello, into the cello. So if we turn your hand, again, it's very much like I do back here, and then your thumb is actually turned, and you are going to be riding along the D string. And the other thing about that is if your hand is this way, you put a ton of pressure. A ton. It can hurt so bad. If you're trying to hold the strings down with your thumb and you turn your hand that way to do it, it's going to hurt a ton. But if you take your fist, and you can feel how the weight just goes in to the fingerboard in a natural way. And then you can go up and down the cello, and your thumb won't, get so tired here. Sometimes if the strings are too high, that doesn't, you still will get tired. But if you'll see that if you do this versus this, it's way easier to get your weight into the fingerboard, and then at the same time you maintain this plane of weight that is good, and you maintain good intervallic intervals in your hand, and your fingers stay supple and fast versus when they're squeezing down. That's a big problem. When you're squeezing your fingers down, everything's going to slow way down. So you want to have this is another part of it. If this knuckle here, this knuckle is way up high, you're going to end up trying to press everything down. If that knuckle is down here and collapsed down, your weight's going into the cello. I don't know if you can see that. This versus this. So I hope that's helpful. Okay, I'm going to move on. I sure hope that was what you were asking about. Relating Thomas Jefferson's invention to copying bow speed is brilliant. No, I am not brilliant. Trust me. But I do, I have, I don't know, I'm a little twisted. But I do think of that. I do talk to, especially the younger groups that I work with, because I work with some kids who are 10, right on through young professional groups when I coach. And they relate to that copying machine idea pretty well. I even have a picture of it. It looks kind of like a hat rack, one of those zigzaggy hat racks, and you put the two pens in there, and everything moved. Only it was really teeny, but everything moved exactly together, and that's one of the little things that I goof around with and talk about. But yeah, so that, but the other is another really, honestly, a little bit more useful for students is, rather than me tell them, you're not in the same part of the bow, it'll be like, hey, whoever's playing second violin, why don't you watch what's going on, and what do you see? Do you see everyone doing the same thing, or do you see this person's doing it hooked and this person is doing it separate, or are you in totally different parts of the bow, or your bow speed's completely different. So in the end, you want people in the group to be observing that and talking to each other about that. But that is one funky little trick of mine. Taisha Hale, hello. Thanks for your question. It says, tips for ricochet bow control. Yeah. Okay. First of all, you have to let the bow do the work, right? Whoops. I'm not going to pull out my Rococo, but you can actually practice, like with a metronome, for instance, where you aren't doing it. I am not bouncing the bow. The cello is bouncing the bow, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you're down here, it's not going to do it. You have to find the place where the bow wants to bounce. And I don't have it with me, but I relate it to a basketball. Bouncing a basketball. When you bounce a basketball, if you want it to be slow, you bounce it from up here, right? Bum, 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 bum. Okay, but what's bouncing the ball? Not you. It's the floor that's bouncing, making the ball bounce. If the floor wasn't there, the ball would just keep going down, right? But the ball hits the floor and bounces back. When you want it to go faster, you get closer. Closer and closer. So you go bum, 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 ba, 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 and you watch like Kyrie Irving do a basketball drill, and if this is the floor, he's going okay, well, it's the same kind of thing in the bow. That's kind of a high bounce. I don't know what if you can see this well. If I want twice as fast, well, that's not. I'm doing spiccato. Ricochet. It's a high bounce. Closer. Triplets. I have to practice this. Fours. Sixes. But meanwhile, if you can see that, I think you can see that, the bow's bouncing really fast now. But if I want it to go slow, I have to do a higher, let it bounce from higher up. That sort of thing. And you can even do it super fast if you really, you know, this trick where you let the bow do the bouncing and it's going like 1,000,000 miles an hour. But again, I'm not doing it. The bow is in the right spot. It's at the right height above the cello. So you have to let it. As soon as you grip in the bow, that's the other thing that'll absolutely kill this. If you're holding the bow tight, it doesn't have any freedom. It's got to be the cello holding the bow up. If you can't do that, you can't do ricochet. And you can even watch it get faster, and you can tell then how high off the string, when you want it to go faster, you flick it much less. You want it to go slower, you click it higher. Same. That's a ricochet. That's also ricochet. So it depends, but the main thing is letting the bow do the work, or the cello bounce the bow, really. And don't hold tight, because then it won't work at all. Hope that's helpful. Okay. And then a long bounce. Again, you have to let the bow do it. If you get too near the frog, though, it won't work. Okay? All right, I hope that helps. All right, I'm going to move on. Orna Carmel. Hi. Thank you for this. Oh, sure. My first finger collapses in the upper register. It's not alone. Is it necessary to correct it? It's the only solution to pull outward from the inside of the string. Kind of. I find it changes the sound. Okay. Well, generally speaking, this is a bad position to be in, if that's what you're talking about. Now I'm going to show you. Look where my weight's going. My weight's going away from the cello, and I'm squeezing. So, although this may sound really weird, but if you do not need to hold the string down. You just need to stop it. Okay, I'm stopping it with my first finger, but I am sort of feeling like it's going to the left. Okay? But you got to be sure. I don't know if you can see that dent in my finger. Okay? It starts way over here and ends up in the middle of my finger. And that's where the center of the sound is, in the middle of my finger. So I'm doing that, but also if you notice, when I'm in thumb position, basically, although these knuckles are over whatever string I'm playing on, like let's say it's the D string, okay? These knuckles are over the next string over. They're over the G string. So that if you keep your small knuckles right over the string that you're playing on, your weight's actually going away from the cello. You want your weight going in to the cello. And if you're doing this, you're going to slow everything down, and it changes the pitch. I mean, so again, that whole business about how I was talking earlier about turning your hand, that's kind of thumb position right there for me. And then this, and if you can see, I'm over this knuckle, my last knuckle is over the D string. It's not over the A string. And when you put it over the A string, you end up being committed to pressing it down, and it often will collapse. I don't have very collapsy fingers like some people do. But the main issue is, okay, here's how your fingers work. They bend this way at this knuckle. They'll bend, right? But they won't bend if you push here. They don't bend. They don't bend left to right. They only bend in and out. So if you're playing on this part of your finger, the string going under here, then you can feel how you can lean into your first finger this way. And then take your hand and go, okay, I'm leaning into my first finger. And that's right there. So I work pretty hard with students to get them to not do this, because you can just see the amount of tension. If you look, you can see the tension it puts into your hand. It puts a lot of tension through this part of your hand. But if you're like this, and then you can have a much freer vibrato here too, with this knuckle, which helps you have a better vibrato. So, that is my deal about the upper registers. If you're leaning the wrong way, your first finger is going to collapse. If you're thinking that you have to press down, your first finger knuckle will collapse here. If instead you feel like your hand is angled or sloped, and the thumb is helping the first finger hold the string down anyway, right? then your finger can be curved and more relaxed. Hope that helps. Okay. Hi from Australia. Let me see my glasses. I have to get the right distance. There you are. Gasparo from Australia. Hello. Thank you for... There you can see me. Thank you very much for asking and being here. Would you mind explaining what one should do with the left arm weight when shifting down from high positions to lower positions? Okay, sure. I would tell you, first of all, you know, that's very interesting. I probably use this word should a lot, but it's really, in my opinion, should, right? But I have a thing about shifting that is sort of wacky, but it works. If you think about, if you were to, let me get something here. Okay, I'm going to eat mashed potatoes, okay, or potatoes or something off my plate. And I'm going to do it, I'm a righty, so I would normally go, wait, here's my plate, and I would take my fork and go like this. Here's the table, go like this, and my arm would come up from the back, and at the same time it'd be bending, and my mouth would open and the food would go in, and then I'd go back down and get more food. I wouldn't leave my elbow up here to get more. It's like if you just watch anybody eat, it's just like shifting. So if you take your left arm, okay, and here's the plate, and you go to eat, when you come back, you're not going to be doing that. So if you think of what your arm is doing in both directions when you shift, it's really coming from back here, and you're describing an arc with your elbow. It's a little hard to see, but it's an arc. And so when you're going up, it's a curve, and if you watch the point of my elbow, like let's say I'm going to be up here, okay, and I'm going to come down, I'm going to line myself up perfectly with that okay, I'm lined up perfectly with the edge of my piano, the top, okay. Now I'm going to be here, let's just say I'm in first position, okay. Now my elbow is here. When I'm up in an upper register, it's here. And if you just watch what the elbow does, I'm balanced here, I'm balanced here. From the side, I'm down here or here. And when I shift, this part of my arm is moving me forward. Not up. Up takes me the wrong place. But around the cello. And my arm swings. It's much like when you walk. Your torso leans you forward, your leg swings, and your foot lands. Okay? Oh, this is going to end very soon. But anyway, that's it. Okay? So when you come down, you have to come to a place of balance. And the back of your arm is what's going to lead you there as you slide back down. I know we're almost done here, if we're not done, but okay, Iman, do you have any suggestions on developing more economic bow articulation? Again, this is what I was talking about before. If you have tension in your bow hand, everything gets really, really difficult because you're not letting the bow sink into the cello. So one good way to do that, put the bow on the cello, hold it with your left hand, plop your right hand on there, and go back and forth and feel how relaxed you can be and still put a lot of weight in. And then keep your hand going towards the cello, not away. If you go away, you're going to start squeezing with your thumb again. Okay, so you want to be just like if, boom, boom, right? You wouldn't, not like, you know, you don't do anything like this, you know, so I don't play the cello like this either. And that will help you. If you're squeezing, all the articulation goes out of the bow, and you end up sliding around, and you can't get anything in there. I know we're just about done. By the way, anyone who's still listening, go to Fishoff, F-I-S-Sam, Fischoff.org this afternoon, and you will hear the finals. And all the groups who are finalists are now, you can observe their videos. And there is a gold, once the gold medals are awarded, there's going to be a gold medal concert that you can watch, as well as live interviews with the winners of the gold medals. I just want to get that in because it starts about now. Let's see. I'm going to try to get to these last questions. Any comment on linking and phrasing the sound? Oh my gosh, this is a huge thing, but absolutely, I am very much in the school of that you're playing the physics of the instrument is that you're pulling on a down bow and pushing on an up bow. So when you're pushing that up bow, if you allow the tip to fall, you're going to end up on the down, what I call the down bow side. This is a huge topic, and I can't really do it quickly. But if you watch my tip, it's going to fall. And then I pull. And I use my fingers to help make that transition. It's much like a swimmer's flip turn, where when I get to this spot, instead of stopping and just turning around, there's action in my fingers, and that smooths out. Pull, push, as opposed to so. And then at the frog, just my fingers are supple and relaxed, and the weight of the tip takes me to the other side of the string, so I don't have to do anything except allow it to happen. That's a really huge subject, and not everybody does this, but I am a big believer in using the weight of the bow and the sides of the string, not on top, but on the side. Up bow, down bow. Let the cello, let physics work for you. Don't fight physics. If you're playing on the down bow side of the string and you're on the G string side, you are fighting physics. But if you're pulling, you're playing with physics, and pushing, and you're playing with physics. That is a super fast answer to a huge, complicated question. Taisha, comment on from Orna. Thank you. Oh, they're just saying thank you. Oh, you're so welcome. It's really my pleasure. And I believe that's going to be the end of the CelloChat for today. And hope that you can go watch the Fishoff competition. You will hear spectacular, amazing players and great cellists who do all these things that I was just telling you about. So I hope you can go to that and enjoy that.